Good morning, history students. I'm hoping that we can get back to school because I can't stand doing this the way that we are right now. But due to the weather, we got to keep going. I actually tried to drive to school yesterday and got all the way there and couldn't get up School Hill. It was too icy. So if you're not thinking it's too icy out there, trust me, I was trying to get up School Hill and it wouldn't let me. Um, it's not to say that you probably still can't get there. Who knows? Somebody may have a rig that can get him up there. I'm sure he probably could with chains on. All right. Today we're going to continue on with Gettysburg. This will be the last day that we talk about Gettysburg. It's a 3-day battle, and it's the crucial battle of the Civil War. This is really the turning point. We're going to talk about Gettysburg. We're going to talk about Vicksburg, and we're going to talk about how this is the turning point of the war. And finally, I'm hoping to get to show you some videos, some about artillery, and then also a continuation of that cartoon that Johnny Bray shared with us, oversimplified history of the Civil War. So we're going to watch a little bit of some of those videos, and I hope you enjoy those. When we last left off, Lee had ran into the Union Army at Gettysburg, not on purpose. He had some troops looking for shoes. On the first day, they pushed the Union back, but they didn't push them plumb off of Cemetery Hill, and that was key because now the Union have the high ground. Day two, they attack on both flanks, one up here and the other one, the big attack down here to the south, trying to get control of Little Round Top, Big Round Top, Devil's Den, this region, and they come within a hair of actually gaining that ground. However, it's unsuccessful. So, with those two things out of the way, Lee thinks, look, I got close on day one if I'd have just pushed him off. I got really close on day two. So, day three is I'm just going in for the knockout blow. That's what Lee is thinking right now. I'm going in for the knockout blow. And he actually has a commander right here, and I forgot the guy's name, that actually gets really close to the center. And because Dan Sickles is sticking out like a sore thumb, um, he gets really close and had maybe some Union commander by the name of Hancock, if he had not actually done what he was, if he hadn't have filled in that gap uh, with some other troops, then possibly they could have got pushed off the ridge. So Leah's thinking, look, they're weak in the center, so this should probably be easy. But this is a mistake. So make sure you guys get today's notes. Just put them on a Google Doc. You guys know how we've done it before. So he's thinking, I'm going to attack the center, and it's going to be easy. This is a colossal error. He's got this attack is known as Pickett's charge. Says right there. However, I do want to point out there are other commanders there. There's Pettigrew, Trimble, Pickett, Anderson. There are several guys that are actually attacking on this. Pickett gets a lot of the attention because going into the battle, he's extremely hyped up. He's like, let's go kick some butt. He's very excited about going into the battle. And he also has a very famous quote that we'll talk about later that probably puts him at the forefront and why he gets so much attention. Not only that, but his three corps commanders, Garnett, Armistead, and Kemper, will all be injured. Kemper and Garnett are going to be injured. Armistead actually is going to get really close right here at the angle. He basically gets up on the fortifications, grabs a cannon, and encourages his men. Let's go get them, boys. Let's turn these cannon around and let's fire it on them. And then he gets shot, and he will die. A cool kind of side note here, Hancock and Armistead were actually roommates in college. They were at West Point together, and in college they were kind of like roommates, and now Hancock's troops is going to basically be responsible for killing his own roommate Armistead, and vice versa. Armistead's troops are going to be in charge of killing some of Hancock's. It's just kind of a cool story, you might say. These guys were very good friends, but obviously the war got in the way. All right, this is going to be a colossal mistake, Pickett's charge, and here's why. You are looking at the top of Cemetery Hill, so all these Union troops would have been up here, either on behind this stone wall or down here in front of the fence that is along the road. They would have been up on this hill with fortifications, and where would the Confederate troops have been? Back in this tree line, way back there in the tree line. What does that mean? The Confederate troops have to cross a good mile, mile and a half just to get here. And it's across open ground. This is catastrophic. You know, had this been the War of 1812, you probably could have crossed that field and probably wouldn't have, had a good chance of getting killed until you were right up close to them. But this is not. Rifling has been invented. We've got cannons that are being rifled. We've got guns that are being rifled. So essentially, as soon as they step out from that tree line and actually start marching across, they are under constant fire. Now, the closer they get, the greater the effect is going to be. And sure, there's going to be rifled shells, but the big thing that's going to happen that's going to kill a lot of guys is going to be an artillery weapon, which we call canister shot. And I'm going to stop sharing this real quick so I can show you basically what canister shot is going to look like. I had some pulled up here. Let me see if I can't find it again. Here's a great picture of it. So let me share this with you guys, just so you get an idea of actually what is coming at these Union troops. I'm sure you can look it up, but basically it's like a huge coffee can, and inside of it are hundreds of balls. It's essentially turns that cannon into a massive shotgun. So instead of a shell hitting, a couple guys or a small group, this canister shot is going to be able to be shot out, and it's going to go basically have a shotgun effect upon these massive soldiers that are going to be marching across that field. And to further give you an idea of what that's going to look like, I'm going to show you a quick video here. So I'm going to stop sharing, make sure I share this video with you guys. We're not going to watch the whole video, but we are going to watch a little bit of it. You might hear some language in the background. I don't know. But you're basically going to get to see what it's like to actually see canister shot fired, and just imagine lines of soldiers walking across this field as this video plays.
Fire! Fire! We killed the tree.
That one made to the forest.
Yeah,
took that tree out. Yeah.
Fire!
That's a great image right there. If you've got a line of troops marching across that, it's not going to kill one or two guys. We're talking easily 10 to 15 guys are going to get hit by this, because it's going to go through the front line and go into the back line and continue on. It's not just going to stop upon impact of one person a lot of times.
Track that one easy.
Fire!
Oh, and it keeps going.
Ship. Fire!
No, I see a piece right there.
Yeah.
And it's still smoking.
They also got a thing called double canister, but in this, I wanted to skip ahead a little bit here. This time they're going to shoot it, and they have way off in the distance here. This is probably a good quarter-mile away, believe it or not. They've got one set of cardboard up and then some other back here. They're going to shoot it into cardboard from a long distance just to see what the effect is.
Fire!
Woo! Man. There's some trees. The guy on the left.
And that's a great image. You see shot all the way from here, all the way over to here. That's a large group of soldiers that's getting hit. So as they're marching across that field that day, it takes a lot of nerve and a lot of guts to actually continue to march as you see this canister shot just wipe out regiments. Which always gets me to thinking, what was in these guys to make them want to do something like that to continue on. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of these guys are all going to be from the same town. So if they're all from the same town, if they retreat, if they run away, if they are cowards, it's going to really reflect bad upon them. Now they got to go back and everybody's going to recognize, oh, that's the coward that ran away. So that's, that's what's going to keep a lot of guys, that and their sense of duty and honor and just good training is basically going to get these guys to march into the teeth of the beast that is the Union lines here this day. So Pickett's charge, big mistake by Robert E. Lee. They have to cross fields. Make sure you get these notes. Why does he believe this attack will work? Well, there's a couple of different reasons. Make sure you get the notes. You don't have to get this question, but it's something that we would talk about on the, if I'm actually teaching in the class. So why does he believe the attack will work? Again, first day got close. Second day got really close. Another reason is Jeb Stuart arrives that night. Going into day 3, he arrives, probably around midnight, somewhere around in there. And what Lee tells Jeb Stuart to do is actually attack in one part of the battlefield, kind of be a distraction while these guys are marching across that field. And this is supposed to kind of help soften up the center. And let me go back to an image here to kind of show you what I'm talking about. This is not the image, but it kind of gives you the same idea. So while they got to march across this field here to attack the Union center, Jeb Stuart, even though this is not showing you him because he wasn't here on day 2, this is a picture of day 2, not day 3. But Jeb Stuart is going to be told to kind of act like he's attacking over here. And what they're hoping will happen is there'll be some troops go over here and it will soften up the center. So that's one reason why Lee is thinking this attack will be successful. He also, they have the largest cannon barrage that is going to basically be shot into this heel of the war. But it doesn't work. They've got good fortifications. You've got good stone structures here to protect you. And not only that, but you've got to shoot sort of uphill and across, whereas they hold the high ground. So why attack the center? He had already attacked to the right and the left. So if you need to pause the video, make sure you get these notes. It's going to be a massive mistake on Lee's part. And the reason why it's really called Pickett's charge, and to kind of show you and explain to you why it's such a big mistake, he's going to lose, I think on day 3, he's probably going to lose right around 5,000 soldiers that are either killed, wounded, or missing in action. He also loses Armistead, a commander. He loses several officers. And Lee doesn't have the replacements that the Union Army is going to have. So when he basically attacks, he's wiping out a large portion of his troops. There will be entire corps that are almost wiped out because of this attack, as well as the previous day's attacks have been, pretty bloody as well. Gettysburg is the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. 51,000 soldiers. Now that's just not the Confederacy, but 51,000 soldiers in those 3 days are going to be either killed, wounded, or missing. This is going to be an extremely bloody affair. Um, but this is the beginning of the end for the Confederacy because they're going to lose way too many troops and they don't have any replacements when they go back. You know, they have pretty much tapped out as many resources and as many men as they can get. So from here on out, they're really it's a losing venture, and they don't have the reinforcements that the Union is going to have. Oh, and Pickett. The reason why he gets so famous is because Robert E. Lee basically says, General, form up your division. You know, Pickett is now retreating back down the hill, and Lee is afraid of the Union counterattacking. And so he says, Pickett, get your division, get them organized so we can watch out for a counterattack. And Pickett famously says, Sir, I have no division. So that kind of explains to you the kind of damage and bloodshed that is happening on that day. It's a major mistake. Uh, Furthermore, you would think that the very next day that the Union Army is going to go on the attack and push Lee out. And what do they allow Lee to do? They allow Lee to limp back into Virginia. And this is going to make Lincoln upset. Why not crush this army and get this war over with? And so he's going to look for a new general. Even though Meade is going to be victorious and everybody's happy about them winning, he's going to be upset about letting him kind of limp back into Virginia. Why let him do that? Just end the war already. So, all right. We've talked about Gettysburg. This happens on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. There is, July 4th is Independence Day, and there's something else going on in a different part of the war. You've got the fight over the Mississippi River, and Grant has basically got it narrowed down to a small little place called Vicksburg, and he owns the Mississippi River except for that spot right there. All I need to do is surround the town and wait for them to give up, and that's what he does. Basically, for a good long 2 months, he has pretty much surrounded this town. Right around May 18th, somewhere around in there, they have surrounded the town and not letting anything in or out. So good luck living off of rats or whatever. So Gettysburg is fought on July 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Grant, at the same time out west, is going to surround Vicksburg from May 18th to July 4th. And July 4th, the Confederates are finally going to give up. This is why this is kind of known as the turning point, because as the same time that you got Gettysburg, a big Union victory in crushing Lee, but you've also got Vicksburg, a great victory out west. So this is basically going to be the beginning of the end of the Confederacy, the high water mark, so to speak. These are just some pictures that kind of show you about the siege of Vicksburg. And they surrender on July 4th. To give you another picture right here, this is actually the people in Vicksburg had been surrounded and they've been constantly bombarded day and night. And so they want to go to bed with some certainty that there's not going to have a cannonball come through their bedroom and blow them up. So what do? Or even in the daytime, because the Union Army is constantly bombarding their town, they will dig into the cliffs and the hillsides there and basically live like rats just so they can survive. And people get down to eating nasty things that are just unthinkable that we wouldn't think about. Dogs, cats. I mean, it gets really bad. Rats. It's not good if you're living in Vicksburg in this day and time. And that is the turning point of the war. For today, that is your notes. I also want you to basically watch this video. So if you need to pause the video and make sure you get both this slide of notes and Pickett's charge notes, make sure you do that. I also want to share with you the video that Johnny shared with me. It's the oversimplified video, and I'm going to share it on this Zoom as well. If you don't want to watch it on this Zoom, then I'll probably I hate this green screen. I don't know why it does that. It just does.
When you shop online. As the Union struggle to take control in the East continued, elsewhere, the war raged on. The Confederates attempted an invasion of Kentucky, hoping the state as a whole would join them, but they were pushed back. The Indian Territory saw Native American tribes ally with one side or the other in the hopes of securing rights after the war. Along the Mississippi, General Ulysses S. Grant remained one of the few Union generals scoring major victories. With his best pal, General Sherman, by his side, Grant led his armies down the Mississippi to the Confederate stronghold of Vicksburg. Both sides knew that if Vicksburg fell, the Confederacy would be split in two, and the Confederates prepared for an intense defense of the city. But back in the East, Lincoln still wanted somebody to march south and take Richmond. Having given General McClellan the boot, he needed a new man in charge. All right, Mr. President, option 1 is General Hooker. Bit of a nutcase, but a good general. Option 2, his qualifications are his name is Burnside and he has freaking dope-ass sideburns. Say no more. So General Burnside was put in charge of the Army of the Potomac and sent south. Lincoln hoped he finally had a general who could succeed. Burnside met General Lee at the city of Fredericksburg, where he intended to rapidly cross the river and take the city. But the Union War Department was too slow in delivering the pontoon bridges, and the two sides were forced to camp across from each other, close enough to speak. Hey Yankee, ready to get your butt kicked? Yeah, right, Rebel. God is on our side. No way, God's on our side. Oh, you think so? Well, why don't we ask him? Hey God, whose side are you on? Ow. Dude, uncool. With over 100,000 men, the Union Army finally launched their massive attack on the 11th of December. But by now, the Confederates had amassed their forces. During the battle, wave after wave of brave Union men marched headlong into a brutal Confederate onslaught. Even the Confederates couldn't believe what they were seeing, and in one moment of camaraderie, a Confederate sergeant, unable to take it, reportedly came out into the field to tend to the Union wounded. Seeing this, the Union troops held their fire. Still, Burnside and his forces were soundly defeated at Fredericksburg and forced to retreat. Lincoln's popularity and Northern morale continued to plummet, especially as the winter heading into 1863 was bad. The winter camps were rife with disease. The food was less than appealing. On both sides, men began to leave. Hey, where do you think you're going? I'm deserting. What? Don't you love your country? Yes, I do. And I'm trying to get back to it as quick as I can. Lincoln, ever the kind and caring man he was, spent much of his time pardoning deserters' death sentences. Oh my, here's a 17-year-old boy sentenced to be hanged. Well, I'd better suspend his sentence. Or he'll be suspended tomorrow. What? To try to keep the numbers up, both sides had introduced conscription. There was controversy in the North, however, since rich men could simply pay to have someone else fight on their behalf. Riots broke out in New York City, with enraged mobs furious at the idea of going to fight for slaves, an idea that many of them simply did not support. However, after so much pressure, the Union had finally begun allowing black men to enlist, and these men, knowing what they were fighting for, signed up. By the end of the war, nearly 200,000 troops, 10% of the Union Army, would be black. The valor and bravery they showed throughout, silencing critics. Okay, well that last guy was useless. Let's try this Hooker fellow. General Joseph Hooker was put in charge of the Army of the Potomac, and once again, Lincoln ordered him to move south and take Richmond. Hooker met Lee at the Battle of Chancellorsville, where Hooker had over twice the men Lee did. Lee was forced to defy all military convention and split his smaller force into two. Lee had absolutely no chance of winning, and Lee won. It was his masterpiece. Lee did suffer one significant loss during the battle, though. As his right-hand man, Stonewall Jackson, was riding back to the Confederate lines at night, the nervous Confederate troops, unable to recognize him, opened fire. You boys done goofed up. Jackson died 8 days later. As for Lincoln, he couldn't believe it. It was yet another loss, and Northern support continued to waver.
So, here we go. Our battering ram is almost in position. Hopefully, once we get this in, we
While the Union kept on struggling in the East, out west, unconditional surrender Grant was making moves as always. In an attempt to take Vicksburg on the Mississippi, he made a series of risky and bold movements. He sent a cavalry raid and feigned Sherman north to confuse the enemy. Then, aided by a fleet of ironclads on the river, he raced his army south to cross the Mississippi. Aware that the terrain to the north was restrictive, instead, he strategically moved northeast, hitting Vicksburg's supply line and defending his rear from Confederate armies in Jackson. Once he reached Vicksburg, the Confederate defense became hardened, and Grant was forced to settle in for a month-long siege, during which time he got rather bored. Despite not taking the city, Lincoln loved it and encouraged Grant to hold firm. It would only be a matter of time before the Mississippi was in Union hands. Around this time, the people in the west of Virginia, who had remained loyal to the Union throughout, finally broke away to form their own state. They could have named it anything in the world, but the creative minds at the time came up with the ingenious West Virginia. Back in Washington, Lincoln once again wanted a new general to take command. Oh my goodness, why do all these 19th century generals look so bust? Look, we got Sleepy Eyes Joe here. That's Princess Leia with a mustache. E.T. phoned the doctor. Fine, why don't we give Snapping Turtle McGee here a shot? So General Snapping Turtle McGee was put in charge of the Army of the Potomac, and it was a crucial time for the Union, because once again, the Confederates decided to go on the attack. So far, they had done exceedingly well militarily, but as the war kept going, the Confederate economy was crumbling. Riots broke out in the streets of Richmond as the price of bread skyrocketed. Supplies were dwindling. Jefferson Davis wanted to send men west to rescue Vicksburg, but General Lee knew the longer the war lasted, the worse their chances got. And he still hoped if he could just threaten D.C., the already demoralized North would surrender. So in June 1863, with the momentum behind him, General Lee once again entered the North, fighting his way through Maryland and into Pennsylvania. General Meade set out to meet him for what would be the most significant battle of the entire war. If the Confederates won, D.C. could fall. If the Union won, it would be a turning point, as the Confederates would run out of steam, and the small town that was to get caught up in the crossfire of the largest battle in American history was Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. On June 1st, units from each army encountered one another and skirmished through the town itself. The townspeople were forced to take refuge, except for one man who reportedly ran outside for a strange reason. "Joseph, what are you doing?" "I'm not gonna let them take my beans." "How many times do I have to tell you, they're not here for your beans?" By the second day, over 100,000 men stretched for miles across the battlefield. Lee took the initiative, deciding to hit the enemy's flanks, and he came very close to breaking through the Union's disorganized left. But Union Colonel Joshua Chamberlain ordered a desperate bayonet charge, smashing into the Confederates and forcing them back. The Union forces held across the line. On the final day, Lee believed the Union Army had fortified its flanks, so he decided to finish them off with one massive central assault. The Confederates rushed at the Union lines during General Pickett's charge, and this time, it was the Union's turn to unleash hell. Meade had correctly guessed Lee's strategy, and the Confederates were decimated, forced to turn and flee. A devastated General Lee called out to his fleeing and wounded men, telling them it was his fault. And after holding for a counterattack that never came, he ordered a retreat back into Virginia. The North had just managed to score a massive victory, and one they desperately needed. And if that wasn't enough, in the West, after a month-long siege, Vicksburg finally fell. The North now held the Mississippi, and better yet, it was the 4th of July. With control of the Mississippi, Union forces moved into Arkansas and Tennessee. Tennessee in particular saw heavy fighting, with Union General Rosecrans masterfully pushing Braxton Bragg's Army of the Tennessee out of Tennessee. He suffered a major setback, however, at the bloody Battle of Chickamauga, and ended up under a Confederate siege at Chattanooga. At one point during the siege, a temporary truce was declared so that wounded men could be recovered. And often in the Civil War, during these small truces, men from both sides would meet in the middle to trade things like tobacco, coffee, and maybe even honey. Do you like honey?
Oh goodness. I'm gonna stop the video there. It's kind of where we kind of are going to get to. It's where we're at right now. So we went over the notes. Make sure you guys take those notes and then make sure you put them on today's Google Classroom assignment. And I hope to get to see you guys soon. If not, I'll probably be uploading some more videos like I've been doing. If you don't like that and you would rather do something different, or maybe you want to Zoom like we normally do on an everyday thing, You can send me an email your suggestions. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Be good.